Yay! Hello everyone, welcome to Midweek Gaming. I'm Nick. Over on this side is of course Justin. That was a weird intro for me just saying yay, but we'll move on. Um so this will be a short one today, mostly because this is not the day we usually record. We usually record on Wednesdays, but because of things going on, a graduation ceremony I'm attending, I will not be able to record, so I figured, in celebration or maybe just the effect, we'll do effect, the reasons. Yeah, we'll go with reasons. It's just shorter form content, or at least we'll try. You know how it is. So, anyways, the content for today is, if you haven't read the title, Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 16 is, of course, coming out Thursday this week, as of the day of this recording, which is Tuesday, June 20th. Will be coming out on the 22nd. I will be playing it because I have purchased the deluxe, I believe it is, and I've also played the demo. So I'll be giving my thoughts on the demo, my thoughts on Final Fantasy as a whole, that kind of thing. I know that there's a big shtick right now of, well, I don't want to say big. It's a bit of an interesting point though that they've increasingly been changing up the combat system when it comes to Final Fantasy. For those who remember, like way back in the early days of Final Fantasy, like before 15, 14, da 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 da, it was originally a um, turn-based action or turn-based essentially. You'd have a party of people, and then you'd have a party of enemies, four enemies, and then you take turns. Attack. This character would attack, and then the other character would attack, and so on and so forth. It was a back and forth, and of course, it kind of had that Pokemon aesthetic where you'd be walking around sometimes and you just randomly get an enemy encounter. That has been done away with for some time now. It has now been real-time strategy or real-time action or real-time combat. Yeah, that's a word. Since about Final Fantasy 15, which I did play to completion. Very good game. I think a lot of people actually got into Final Fantasy with Final Fantasy 15, from what I hear. So, I'm not surprised. It's an interesting game. And they went with a more real-time battle strategy where instead of, your party on one side and the enemies on the other all neatly lined up, it's the enemies just there and you're running around and you can press buttons to attack and heal anytime you want, but they can as well. So it turns the battle into a lot more of a back and forth kind of chess match in a way, if you want to think about it that way, into much more of a quicker battle and maybe harder to keep track of things. I don't know. Depends on how you are. Which was an interesting innovation. It made things a bit more realistic. Instead of randomly running across enemies, you could actually see them out in the world, and if you wanted to battle them, you just ran up and attacked them. Um, with Final Fantasy 16, they innovated it a bit more. Well, actually, no, they innovated it a bit. I can't remember if they kept the same Final Fantasy 7 remake. I think they kept the same system when they remade the remake and made it into a full-time strategy, because that one was also originally a turn-based game. But now they've iterated on it even more come 16. And the way they're doing it is that usually how Final Fantasy works is that, again, there is a party of characters that you play with, and this time they just turned away from the turn-based and went to real-time strategy. Now with 16, they're not even giving you a party of people. You are primarily only playing one character. Clyde, I believe his name is, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. But yeah, just one character. I believe his name is Clyde, and he will be the protagonist throughout the entire game. Now, you only have to worry about him, which is, I guess, simpler, because now you don't have to worry about, micromanaging your whole party, because if your party got wounded before, you had to make sure they were healed up before the last battle, and you got to buy equipment for each one of your companions, and make sure they're all geared up, because otherwise one companion would just die instantly if they get hit by something. It was a bit more micromanaging. So it's a bit easier to kind of deal with it this way. But we will see. Don't get me wrong, there will be people that you encounter throughout the game,
Yeah.
which kind of brings me into the demo, which plays through the first chapter. Before those who don't know, if you play the demo, you can actually import your save over from the demo into the actual game itself if you get it. So you don't have to worry about playing the
So
demo and
the
then having to.
the
Hmm.
demo is mostly just the tutorial phase type thing.
I wouldn't say it's a tutorial base. It's the entire first chapter of the game. So there is the tutorial in there, but there's also like the first bit of the game as well. I've heard people who've done reviews and who have gotten their hands on other bits of the game, mostly embargo stuff, or mostly or no, mostly people who've talked with the developers, that usually Final Fantasy is very linear. In 15, they went far more open world. In Remake, they kind of kept the linear design of the levels because, again, 15 was back in the era of turn-based strategy, which, again, was by necessity a lot more linear. In the case of 16, they're kind of having their cake and eating it too. What I mean by that is that they're not going full-on open world like they did with Final Fantasy 15. So if you're expecting a massive open world to run around in, forget it. They do have zones, however, and there will be a centralized hub zone that you go to. But for the most part, it will be zoned off areas, but these zones are not that small. The first section of the game, Chapter 1, at the very least, because I played that chapter, I can tell you for a fact, is very linear. Much like the old style of the games. Very linear, go from point A to point B. But as the game goes into, as the game opens up more, as you get further into story, they will kind of go a bit more into the semi-open world giant level design. So it won't be entirely linear. It kind of opens up as you go through the game. Or so we've been told, because like I said, that's beyond Chapter 1, and we don't know yet, because all we were given was Chapter 1. All in all, though, how the game works out is actually not that bad. It has a rather interesting story, interesting bit of political controversy. I think I agree with a lot of people when they say that the Final Fantasy 16 story is a lot more serious than previous Final Fantasy games. Like, don't get me wrong, some of the Final Fantasy games had serious undertones. Final Fantasy 16 had a bit of political controversy, or not political controversy, political intrigue that came with, corruption and manipulation and da-da-da-da. But it was never that big of a thing, right? There was always a humor to it. Final Fantasy 16, on the other hand, is very much not very humorous. It is very much a serious story. There is no comic relief for the most part, as far as I can tell so far.
Very one-sided with it all.
I wouldn't say one-sided, but it's very much a purely much more serious story. Whereas in 15, you had characters like Prompto who were kind of there for comic relief, making jokes and stuff like that. In 15, or 16, you have none of that. Basically, the whole plot of the story, to summarize it, is that you are one of the two sons of a king, or archduke, I should say, not actual king, but archduke. And, you are the firstborn son, but you're not the heir to the family throne. Reason is because the heirs to the noble thrones are what have to be chosen by basically the gods or this powerful spirit thing. Basically the summons of previous games, so characters like Odin, characters like Gaia, characters like Titan. I don't know about Gaia. Titan is in there, Behemoth, that kind of characters. I don't remember what they're called in this game. I believe they're called. Actually, I don't remember what they're called in the game at the moment. But basically, you have to be chosen by one of these big things or these big entities, and it's kind of passed down through the royal bloodline. So, despite being the firstborn, your character Clive, was not chosen. Your little brother was. Which is all well and good. He's being a supportive older brother, and his little brother adores him for it. And little brother thinks it should have been him, and he's not worthy. And very good sibling relationship, right? The father's supportive. The Archduke himself, he's like, you know what? You're gonna grow into be a fine knight. But the mother, on the other hand, is not. The mother is very much only interested in the noble bloodline aspect, and is very much only interested in the younger sibling, and kind of treats the older sibling like garbage because he's not been chosen, so he's not worthy. So whatever.
Eh.
I could go more into it, but I'd kind of be spoiling the first act of the game. I don't know if that's the thing. I mean, it's in the demo.
I mean,
Demo's out for a
how long
while,
has
so.
the demo been out, would you say?
I don't remember the exact date. Let me just figure it out. Let me just look that up real quick and give you an exact date, because I honestly do not know. release date. Excuse me. It has been out since June 12th.
There you go. So,
Okay.
not an extraordinary amount of time, but
Not an
I'd say a
extraordinary
long
amount of time, but
enough amount of time that it's like, if you're not familiar with it, you should be by now, kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
if you were
I won't say
interested in the franchise, you'd probably know about it by now.
that's the thing, right? The Final Fantasy games are interesting in that regard, where I think you can almost refer to them the kind of relationship that Legend of Zelda had with all of its games prior to Breath of the Wild, where you don't really need to complete the other games to get what's going on in the Legend of Zelda games because they're all more or less self-contained stories. And Final Fantasy has always had that shtick to it as well, where yeah, there are core concepts that are the same across all games. Again, previously mentioned these godlike summons, which in some versions of the game are depicted as summons and others as spirits, but they're these kind of higher beings, again, Behemoth, Odin, I want to say Guy. I don't know why I want to say Guy, but I don't think she's in there. But, characters like that, Phoenix is in there. In fact, Phoenix is actually, funny enough, the particular um, divine thing that runs down the family for your main character in Final Fantasy 16. But, there are certain core aspects. Again, those characters, the concept of crystals always plays a major part in the Final Fantasy games. There are core concepts, but the stories themselves tend to vary differently, wildly, I mean. Kind of like, again, Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda, you always generally have the Master Sword, you've got Link, you've got Zelda in various shenanigans. You've got the Triforce thrown in there sometimes. There's core concepts that stay the same, but the stories tend to vary wildly, with no real solid link. I'm sure there's someone who's very deep into Final Fantasy lore who would contest that, because I'm sure there is some linkage to them. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because I've got the sneaky feeling it's as deep as the Kingdom Hearts rabbit hole. In other words, once you go down it, you never come out. So I'm a not. Make the grown-up decision to not do that. At least not now. So, anyways, yeah, that's kind of the state of the game. Like I said, it's a very serious game. Going back to the serious story, there's the whole concept that war is brewing between these many kingdoms, and that these powerful crystals that are kind of the central point of where all these families draw their power from may be poisoning the land. But that might not get revealed till later, because again, that's been hinted to in the trailers. We're not sure how yet, but eh.
From somewhere.
It's somewhere in there. But anyways, yeah, it's a much more serious political intrigue story. You got a lot of, like I said, infighting amongst these royal families and fighting amongst the other families in general. You've got, the carnage that comes with war, which is always unfortunate to see people die in mass, but whatever. 'Tis war, right? But yeah, that's kind of the tone you'll get in Final Fantasy 16. When it comes to companions, I don't believe I've mentioned it fully. Like I said, you won't be getting actual companions who join your party. They will be more akin to guest characters where they will not officially join your party. Like, you won't have to mod their abilities or tweak out their stats or anything, or give them equipment to keep them up to date with the power levels. They're kind of guest characters. They'll come in and out of your party as the story progresses. So you won't have to really deal with them. And again, it will focus primarily on Clyde. Final Fantasy XVI is also quite interesting in that it will actually take place over 3 eras of the protagonist's life. First, you'll start off with Clive as a teen, which you actually get to see an extensive amount of in the first chapter. Then you'll see him in his 20s, and then the game will kind of, I'm guessing, end around him in his 30s. Final Fantasy 15 did this kind of, with Noctis being the protagonist, being, let's say, in his early 20s, late teens in the beginning of the game, and then being, in his 30s after a massive time skip, or, in his late 20s, let's say, or mid 20s after a time skip in the game. But that was very much in the end of the game, and that was kind of a climax moment, so it's not really something that you do extensively. Whereas in this game, you'll be hopping back and forth between the timeline. So, eh.
What can
But
you
from
do
what
on
I've
that?
seen, yeah, from what I've seen so far, it's not like like it sounds like it'll be weird, but it actually plays out rather well. Like the game itself opens up in the demo on chapter 1 with you kind of seeing the kind of where they are kind of in present day. You know, you see kind of a thing, you know, big battle happens, you get a bit of a tutorial section, main character gets knocked out, and then you're kind of teleported back to his childhood. It's kind of those things where you start off at the end of the story, and through a certain set of circumstances, for one reason or another, you get an excuse to get the whole prequel of that story, and you go back in time to, you know, the 20 years prior segment, if you will. So it's actually not a bad. So it actually doesn't play out that badly. All in all, combat still feels very fluid, very solid. Interestingly enough, this is kind of part of the story. But as I mentioned before, you are the firstborn son of an archduke who didn't get the blessing of the phoenix. Kind of. Well, you don't actually get the full power of the phoenix. You kind of get its blessing. Again, how that works is again beyond me. I'm presuming you'll learn more about that as the game goes on. I don't know. But because of this power, you can kind of use some of the phoenix's abilities. And this kind of manifests as special abilities you can do in game, magic you can throw around. There actually doesn't appear to be any MP bar that I can see as of yet. But then again, I haven't seen any official magic in the game yet, so maybe that'll get introduced later. Most of the stuff you find is on cooldowns, so you don't have to worry about so you can ability spam to some extent, but there's no like overtly broken abilities as of so far. But again, this is only chapter 1, so we'll see. Granted, I think chapter 1 takes about an hour or 2 hours to complete, depending, I think, rough estimates from what I remember. And the game designers have said that it will take about 45 to 70 hours to complete, or 45 to about 60 hours to complete if you're doing just the base campaign, and maybe double that if you're doing a full run. So, not a very long game. It is certainly no Red Dead 2 or AC3 where at minimum you are sinking 100 hours just into the base missions. So, you know, that's refreshing if you're not into the really long games. Again, another good example there is Persona, which I'm very big fan of. Persona 5 Royale, for example, has an average main quest playtime of about 105 hours, something like that. And that's just for the main story. So, yikes. All in all, though, not bad. I think the Final Fantasy, like, there's going to be some people who are upset with the kind of, like, push Final Fantasy is going into more of a single-player based story instead of a party-based story. You know, not sure how the people are going to feel about a story more based on political intrigue and much more serious overtone than, you know, the kind of... It's serious, but there's also a bit of comedy to it that previous Final Fantasy games have. Don't get me wrong, it's not going to be like a Yakuza game for... The old games weren't exactly the old, like, the Yakuza games where you'd have a very serious story and then just complete off-the-walls madness in the side quests. Where, you know, one minute you're trying to solve, like, a assassination mission of, like, your best friend, and then the next minute you're delivering pizza to, like, some dude on the street. Or in the case of, like, Yakuza 0, I believe, you're running, like, a cabaret club for some reason. And it's just, like, or a phone dating minigame, it's weird. Like I said, the Yakuza games have some very strange side quests. I really am interested to see what, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which is basically Yakuza continuation, will bring, but that's beside the point. This is very much, like I said, a serious game with a serious story, so we'll see how it goes out. So far, the story, like I said, is pretty good, not gonna lie. It's not cheesy, I would say, so far. It's got some pretty good moments to it.
It's fairly fleshed out and everything.
Yeah, it's fairly fleshed out. One thing I will say is that the game kind of throws things at you in a perspective of like this is happening, and you just kind of have to like
Take it.
you just kind of have to take it. Like, here is this very important person. Yet that person, when you first meet them, might not explain to you why they're so important, but everyone around you, including the main character, kind of knows why they're important. So this can kind of create some odd moments of like, this should be very serious, yet I don't know why I should be so serious. Interestingly enough, I did learn that in the pause menu of the game that you find in like in-game cutscenes and in-game dialogue, you have an option to actually look at like a lore tab menu, which will show you like a brief little snippet of information about like the big people talking in the conversation and the location you're at. So if you're not, particularly aware of like who is this character and why are they so important and why should I care, that's, there. It's not actually that hard to access. Like I said, it's literally just go into the pause menu. So just press the select button and then it'll show at the bottom of the screen. I believe it's like the touchpad where you press and it'll bring up the menu. It also says that later in the game these will all become viewable outside the cutscenes and that they will all entirely be seen. So I imagine there's going to be some lore book we'll get later on or some library somewhere. I don't know. But that is an interesting way to sidestep the fact the game doesn't always tell you why the things and people you're seeing are important.
Why what you're doing is, what you're doing.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Overall objectives are pretty well explained to you. Like what's going on with Clive's life is fairly straightforward. Not in a bad way, but just that you can understand it. But like I said, sometimes you'll meet important characters that you're not sure why they're so important. But
You're
like I
just
said,
kind
the
of sitting
menu's
there
there.
like, who are you?
Who are you and why should I care? But like I said,
Where
the
is
menu's
dog?
there. Yeah, where's funny you should mention that. You do get a dog in this game, which is new. The only constant companion to Clyde in his entire journey through the game is his canine pet called, I believe, Torgal. Yeah, Torgal. Sounds like the name of a tortoise, but I don't, whatever. And Torgal is actually quite interesting because he can actually help you in battle. He can attack with you. He can, distract the enemies. He can also help you and use healing potions on you. And to my knowledge, he does not have a health bar of his own. So he kind of acts as just like a support character that's in all your battles. You do not get him in Chapter 1, but I assume you get him at some point in the game because he has been shown off in the actual battle trailers and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting. Speaking of battle, let's talk about difficulty options. This is a very unique way of doing difficulty options. Most games have medium, easy, hard, or whatever their naming conventions are, but generally you get the point. Easy, medium, hard, yada yada. Final Fantasy XVI does not. Now you're probably sitting there thinking, oh god, is this going to be Bloodborne where you just have one difficulty option, and if you can't beat it, you are so much in trouble. I can't say the word I was going to say on YouTube. Because YouTube no likey. But, oh well. Do not worry. There technically is a difficulty option set. Like, there technically is difficulty options. Let me explain. So when you start the game, you'll have two options. You'll have story mode, and then you'll have, I believe, what's called adventure mode. Contrary to what you might think, no, not picking story mode does not take away the actual main story. It is just a mode that starts the game off with a few interesting items equipped. There's story mode, like I said, and then there's adventure mode. Adventure mode is basically just the game. You play the game. And then story mode is just you start the game with 5 very special items equipped. What are these items? Well, they are basically Final Fantasy XVI's basically take on giving, I suppose you could say, advantages in combat, which decrease the difficulty. Some of them quite extensive. These are 5 special rings you get when you start the game. And before you ask, no, you do not need to just play story mode to get these rings. You get them whether you play story or adventure. It's just if you play story, they automatically start off as equipped. You following me here?
Yes.
It's a little complicated, but
it keeps going.
it sounds a little complicated, but I assure you it's not. Basically, like I said, you pick story, you just get 5 rings equipped immediately, versus if you play adventure, you just play the base game without the rings equipped, but they are still in your inventory if you want to equip them later. So what do these rings do? Well, they're actually quite interesting because they modify the combat of the game. Some of them quite extremely. For example, there's one ring called the Ring of Swift Evasion, or something akin to that, which basically makes it so that when it's equipped, Clyde will automatically dodge every single attack thrown at him without having to button press anything. He will just immediately dodge it. Another ring, which I can't remember the name of, basically makes it so that when you press one key, or one button, because unfortunately this is a PS5 exclusive, timed exclusive though, so if you're looking for it on Xbox, I believe you can get it, but from what I hear, you'll have to wait quite a bit, so, wager at least a year. So, basically, if you want to play this game, get it on PS5, or be prepared to wait until at least next Christmas. Moving on, back to the rings. When you press one button, you'll do an entire combo which will require several button presses. And then there's another ring which I imagine some people might have equipped even if they don't want the difficulty option, which basically just auto manages Torgal for you. So while you're in combat, it'll just manage Torgo through AI. He'll attack on his own. He'll use support spells on you on his own. He'll use healing items on you on his own. You won't have to manually tell him to do those things, which is actually quite nice. I imagine some people might just have that equipped in general, even if they don't want the difficulty taken down, just so they don't have to manage the dog, so to speak. And there are other rings as well. I do not remember what they do, but you kind of get the point here. There is no direct difficulty slider that will increase the level of enemies and make them more bullet spongy or make them less bullet spongy. You will just get the option to wear the rings or not wear the rings. And if you find the game is too easy, if you have all the rings equipped on story mode, just take them all off and now you're in adventure mode again. Or, just equip a few of them, or some of them, or all of them. Choice is yours.
Some here, some there, some there.
And like I said, don't worry if you don't start the game off on story mode, you will always have these rings on you whether you start on story or adventure. The only difference is in story you'll automatically have them all equipped from the start. And again, same thing in adventure. If you find the game too hard, just start throwing on rings. It's an interesting concept and an interesting play on difficulty settings, because again, it's not an actual slider and it's not an actual level selector. It's more of these are items that can give you kind of busted abilities, which are meant to be accessibility options. Like I said, one of them literally makes it so you will never get hit by any attack. You'll just automatically dodge everything. Which, is kind of busted, but, that's kind of the point.
It do be like that.
It do be like that?
It do be finding the fun part of it all.
Well, if you have if you got finger issues, or you're just not that quick when it comes to reflexes or time, this would be a very safe choice to wear. So again, it's very interesting. No other game to my knowledge has done this kind of thing when it comes to difficulty. Maybe things like the Souls games might implement this in the future. This is certainly an interesting idea.
Yeah, when you think about it, I could possibly see the next Souls, like any Souls-like or Souls games in the future, maybe implementing that type of thing.
Because, Souls games never have a difficulty slider, yet some people have trouble with the Souls games.
Yeah.
Generally, everyone plays the Souls games, has trouble with the Souls games, but you get my point.
Yeah, but no, when you think about it, even for people who find the game too easy or have already mastered it, you can go and up the difficulty and make it harder for yourself.
Yeah, if you wanted to, you can make anti-rings, which, maybe take away some of your health, or make the damage, or make the enemies hit harder,
Yeah, that, it can go both ways, literally making it so that, oh yeah, it's a little easier for somebody else, but it's harder for someone who's, found it too easy or something.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, the rings in Final Fantasy will only make things less difficult for you. There is no increasing difficulty rings.
Yeah, but still.
But, it is certainly an interesting place you could go to.
I could at least see it in a Souls
Chickens.
game. I could see like
Yeah,
a Souls game definitely making it so like yeah you find this too easy. All right, you make it harder for yourself and you can go and get like more rewards or something.
yeah. Here's, yeah. Here's the you will die ring.
Purposely make yourself suffer and you might get something out of it.
Or if you really want to suffer, just make a ring that in the Souls games, which basically makes it so when you wear it, you can only take one attack before you instantly die. You know, the old kind of arcade style.
Yes.
I should really stop saying those things because if I know, you know, if I know Namako or if I
If
know
I
Bandai
know
Namako
them,
or
and I
whatever,
do.
if I know the guys who make these games, yeah, they probably would do that. Like they would just make it so that oh, you die, your entire save file is now gone.
Say goodbye.
And say goodbye to all your progress. Anyway, I feel like they would do that too. It's, But anyways, so yeah, that's the game's take on difficulty options. Like I said, certainly a very interesting take, very modern take on difficulty. Like I've never seen anyone else do something like that before, to my knowledge. And yeah, that's more or less it. Final Fantasy 16, like I said, comes out on the as of date of this recording on the Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. I will certainly be playing it day one. I am very interested to see how the game plays beyond Chapter 1. I already finished the demo in its entirety. I've been not saying much in the way of story content because I know there are people who don't want to play the demo and want to just play it from the get-go when it drops. You know, just want to go in blind, so I'm neglecting to mention any details beyond the most basic stuff that you get told in like literally the first 5 minutes.
Whatever.
And the stuff we get told in the trailers, which I mean, it's on the trailers, so I'm going to consider that public knowledge. So, yeah, but I won't tell you what happens in like the end of the of chapter 1 because I will only say this: if you kind of read the way things are going, it won't surprise you what ends up happening. But beyond that, I won't say anything more as to what happens. But anyways.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But anyways. But yeah, that's kind of Final Fantasy 16. The demo, like I said, plays very well. Much more serious story. Interesting take on combat. We will see if this kind of more single player only, well, I don't want to say single player, if this kind of only one party member model works out well. Or if people will kind of demand parties return, as well as the kind of changes they made to combat. Because like I said, there really is no NP as far as I can tell at this point anymore. It's purely just abilities on cooldowns. Oh yes, one more thing I should mention. I said prior, like I said, you're blessed by the Phoenix, kind of, which basically gives you the ability to wield some of its powers. You know, there's a dash mechanic you can use, there's fireballs you can throw from your hands, you know, real Clash of Clans wizard. Fireball! That kind of thing. But,
Edric Blast!
I don't think you got it, but...
I think I do. I know the special spell.
But yeah, no. So you can use that. You can use those kinds of attacks. Again, all of those are on cooldown. What's interesting is that as you go through the game, you also get the blessings of what looks to be other summons as well. Other kind of, I believe the kind of chosen ones are deacons. So maybe you'll battle other deacons, and you'll kind of get the blessings of their summon god spirit things. Because we see, like in the trailer, we see Atlas getting thrown around a lot. We see Shiva getting thrown around, which Shiva's generally just the ice god. So maybe we'll see that. Not, again, clear how we'll get those going through the game. Again, very much likely tied to some story event, obviously. Though whether that'll be you get it after battling a certain deacon, or whether that'll be a side quest thing, I don't know. But that'll be interesting. And what's interesting is that you don't actually have to scroll through these in the menu. So you don't have to like, kind of like for the Destiny players, you don't have to kind of go to your menu, click, instead of playing, Solar, you're gonna play Arc now. So you're gonna click onto Arc, and now all your abilities reset. And you gotta wait for everything to recharge. Or I'm guessing in the case of just there, you have to go through the menus and doing it. You don't actually have to go through any menus to swap between these abilities. You can actually just like press, I believe it's L1 or R1 while in battle, and you'll swap between them on the fly. So it's a much more fluid system. And you don't have to worry about like constantly go in the menu, click this one, go back out of the game, or go back out of the menu, continue fighting. Oh, I gotta do this now, go back in the menu, on and on and on. So it's a much more fluid fighting system. Like I said, none of those are available in Chapter 1 Beyond the Phoenix, which you have intrinsically. So, we'll see. But yeah, that's basically it. That's Final Fantasy 16. What do you think, Justin? You ever played any Final Fantasy games in the past?
Not entirely a whole lot, no, but I do like the franchise, and seeing where it's gone thus far over the years, I'd say they're always definitely making good improvements.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's kind of funny that you kind of mentioned where the franchise went in the save menu. Actually, when you press save, you'll kind of get like almost like an old pixel art. What's the correct term?
Pendleton? What's he got to say to me?
Let's just call it character icon.
Pendleton is a gutless, lying sack of
Sprite, that's the word. That's the old game. That's the old gaming term. You'll get like the pixel sprite of like the characters in your party. So, Clyde will be there, and then whoever else is with you at the time. And it will kind of show beside your save file which one's in the kind of like pixel sprite form, which is, a nice little callback to Final Fantasy's past. But we will see. This game is certainly going for a much more cinematic feel as well. When you actually do a lot of these big boss fights, you will get... who remembers the age of gaming QTEs? I do. Where you're like, immediately the game stopped and it's like, press square to prevent your character from dying a horrible death. That's kind of what they do in the Final Fantasy game now. In Final Fantasy 16 a lot, they've introduced a lot of like, what they call, I believe, cinematic, cinematic strikes, which will basically be, say a character, you get thrown in the air, and then it's like, oh, press R1 to dodge, and then you dodge, and then your character takes no damage, and it looks really cool, and pixel effects, and, or you press square, which is kind of what they're using for the attack cinematic strike, where, you run at the dragon, and then you pull out your sword, and you stab it right in the head, and that, like, takes a metric ton of damage. Or that causes a metric ton of damage. Versus if you fail it, you'll just do nothing, and maybe you'll take damage instead. Just sit there randomly, just holding your sword, menacingly looking at it. But no, if you fail, maybe you'll just like. Actually, I should experiment to see what happens if you fail the cinematic strikes. But I'm guessing it's just you'll fail to do the strike, or if you fail to dodge, you'll take a metric ton of damage, and you'll sit there. It's funny, actually. There's one particular moment in the game where the actual death animation for what happens if you fail a certain moment in the game, again, story reasons, so I won't tell you what it is, but it the actual like you fail animation of your character just dying, and the actual animation that you would usually see in like a cinematic finale, basically were the exact same. So I didn't know that I actually failed that segment until I literally saw the words "game over" on the screen. I'm like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. So it is funny that they're going for a much more cinematic feel, to the point where even the you died animations look so good that you can't tell if that was supposed to happen or not.
You are dead.
Yeah, it's like you just see the character just fall over limp, and you're like,
is this main plot?
It's like, is this main plot? The character just dies? Okay, fair enough. Then you just see game over and like, oh,
Is
that wasn't
this-
supposed to happen.
Is this plot armor?
Yes, the plot armor has failed me. Surprise, there is no plot armor. The main character dies. You just go to another character. The credits just roll right there. There is no game over. The credits just roll right there. But yeah, that's kind of the whole shtick for the game. It's going for much more cinematic feel. Honestly, the environments themselves look really good outside of just the cinematics. Like, you can clearly tell that, again, this is what I should have actually mentioned before I forget, is that this is a current gen exclusive game. So if you want to play it, it'll only be on PS5 and presumably only on Series X and PC whenever that happens. It took 2 years for us to get Final Fantasy 15 on PC after it released, so again, you'll be waiting a while. So if you want to play it, just play it on PS, or I guess don't play it at all, or be prepared to wait a really long time, I suppose.
Likely would have to wait a very long time.
Like I said, 2 years just to get the PC release for 15 after release, so it is certainly a long turnaround time. Honestly, though, the game worlds itself look very nice. They look very well animated, very well done. Lot of pixel effects, not gonna lie, or particle effects. There is a ton of particle effects here. But it's not just the beauty in the particle effect, it is also, like I said, the beauty in the environments themselves. They look very well done. Especially compared, like, are they better than Final Fantasy VII Remake? Well, in fairness, Remake was done on the PS4, and this is a PS5 exclusive, so there is the natural level of, yes, it's obviously going to look better. But would I say it's a massive step up? Maybe about 1 or 2 steps, but not like 5. But again, that's maybe just my own personal opinion. Now let me see if I've forgotten to talk about anything before I truly sign off this time. I hate it when I do that. I'm just like, and that's the game, and then 10 seconds in, oh, I forgot this.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, if it's like a car salesman here, but there's more. But wait, there's more. But anyways, let me think for a second. Cover the environments. Cover what I can of the story. Covered the kind of flow of the battles. On the topic of battles, let's just mention this part. I didn't know if I was going to say it, but since I'm recapping everything, I might as well say this as well. You will also get, like, there's 2 sides of the battle system in Final Fantasy. There is the on-ground, like, person-to-person combat, and then there is the massive, like, monster battles. Remember I said that these beings are kind of blessed? They're individuals who are blessed by these spirits and have great power because of that? Well, they can also just transform into these beings for reasons, because why not? And so can your character, for story reasons. The story being that your character gets blessed by Ifrit instead of the Phoenix. Again, not a story spoiler because it's basically told to us in the trailers. So, when you're fighting the Deacons, you'll have these... I believe they're called Deacons anyway. You'll have these moments where, you know, you'll fight the person themselves, and then they'll just go full-on, like, beast form on you. And then it just turns into, like, this giant kaiju battle. Like, for example, you'll see, like, Ifrit's style is much more melee-focused, so... You see, like, there's one particular trailer, which is a very good reference here, where you see Ifrit just take, a giant harpy Deacon out of the air and just, like, slam them into the ground. And it is just absolutely insane, the level of, like, cinematography that they're going for when it comes to, like, the feel. It truly does feel like a, you know, massive event going on. And you can truly see where the money went in this game. Let's just say that much. So, covered that. Yeah, that should be about it, I believe. And if you think I've missed something, again, tell me in the comments section. I am always forgetting something. These are not scripted videos, so I am not running off a
These are
script. I'm
dark
just...
times indeed.
These are dark times. We are not even using a script. We are very primitive here at Midway Gaming. We're very poor. We can't even afford a script writer.
Yes. There's no
But,
such thing as script.
There is no such thing as script. There is just a memory. But yeah, no, if you think I forgot anything, just, again, let us know in the comments. Or tell me, what do you think? What do you think about Final Fantasy? You think, or, well, yeah, Final Fantasy in general and just Final Fantasy 15. Do you think it'll be a success, or are you going to play it day one like I am, the fool that I am? I know in the games industry it's considered kind of foolish to buy games day one nowadays, but I still do it anyway.
We will see where it goes.
Yeah. Tell me, like I said, you think it'll be a success? You think it won't be? And yeah, that's about it. Unless you have any ending comments, Justin.
No, I don't have any ending comments. I think that's about it.
You said you didn't play much, and you don't really play
No.
much in Final Fantasy. I'm not surprised about that.
Not
It doesn't
really.
exactly strike me as a series you would play.
Not entirely, no. No,
Too much.
not really.
Too much anime, not enough apocalypse for his taste.
Well, sci-fi works as well.
I suppose so. Maybe some of the more modern Final Fantasies then, where you got like robots and stuff like that. Which is worth mentioning, and this isn't just a final comment, this is just me saying that Final Fantasy tends to bounce around when it comes to timelines, and in the case of Final Fantasy 15, it was a very modern Final Fantasy. You had mech robots, you got convertible cars, you got, jet planes and stuff like that, boats. Well, not boats, but, like motorboats. Whereas Final Fantasy 15 is much more medieval setting, knights, armor, horses, that kind of thing. Carrier pigeons, or in this case, carrier owls. Magic carrier owls? It's weird.
It is the owl. Do not worry. Do not concern yourself.
You'll know the scene you'll all know the scene when you see it. You'll know what I'm talking about, which makes you wonder how you'll describe it. I guess just magic carrier owl or something. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, much more medieval setting. So there's that to look forward to as well if you're a big fan of medieval fantasy. But anyways, yeah, that's Final Fantasy 15. And yeah, we really need to work on our outros.
Hey, what can you do?
Again, bit of shorter form content because, really didn't feel like doing anything big today. I know there's big news in Destiny going on recently, and Astrocross's video about microtransaction mess and
Yes.
all that stuff.
Story for another time, perhaps, then.
Yeah, story for another time. Trust me, I could gladly sit on my soapbox here and go on about microtransactions, but we would be here all day. You think the hour videos are bad? Oh no, they're not bad. Give me on microtransactions. You won't be here you'll be here at least another week. But anyways, that's the game. We'll see you all next week. Hopefully there's big news to cover. Dry news is dead news, and dead news means very hard time for me to find, a video.
To do stuff.
Yeah, we will see. Hopefully. But anyways, good night all.
Have a good one, ladies and gentlemen.